Hey, what's up, guys? All right, let's get right into it. This video will be somewhat short. It'll at the very least be a good deal shorter than class, but also I feel terrible. So let's get right into it. All I really wanted to do in class is, well, two things really. Number one, I like to, right before a paper is due, sort of pull back the curtain a little bit in terms of what I look at primarily when we're talking about grading. Like I tell you guys all the time, sorry, my throat is on fire. Like I tell you guys all the time, a lot of my teaching, I try to think back to when I was a student, things I wish I had known or whatever. I understand most, if not all of you, really aren't in this class because like you're into English or anything. So what does it really boil down to for you as a student? It's what grade am I going to get and how do I get a better grade? So we're going to focus on that here for a couple minutes. I'm going to walk you through some things to pay attention to, think about as you steamroll towards your final drafts. I also might be breathing kind of heavy. I can't breathe through my nose, so, you know. Anyway, after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the peer review. That's on Turnitin.com. Yeah, I'll talk more about that when I get there. Okay, I'm also very fuzzy. I know I keep apologizing for being sick, but it is going to affect the quality of this video. So anyway, all right, when I'm talking to you about grading, I'm actually just looking at the rubric. I have an iPad right here. I have the rubric pulled up. There's probably a couple ways you could see it, but the easiest one for my money would be, I actually have it listed on CourseDen. It's on our site. It's under the helpful documents section. It's listed in there. Pull it up. This is the rubric I will use for all of your papers. So you might as well get somewhat affiliated with it. That's not the right word. Anyway, I'm going to start at the top, and basically what I'm going to do, the rubric has all kinds of language that you can, and if you feel so inclined, should look over to help you think about, you know, how you're going to approach your final drafts. But what I like to do for this bit is try to boil that down into just a couple. I'll put it this way. What I'm going to talk to you about for each one of these sections on the rubric is not going to be exhaustive. It's not going to be like, this is everything. These are the only things I look at when it comes to the rubric, okay? But what I'm going to highlight for you are the handful of elements in your paper that, if I'm being honest with you, probably make up, I don't know, maybe 90% of the grade you get when it comes to the rubric, right? And I'm just going to boil everything down, try to make it a little simpler than the rubric does. Okay, for instance, requirements right there at the top. It's only 10%. 10% is not nothing. That's a letter grade difference, okay? Requirements is easy. It really comes down to two things. MLA, which we've talked about, and also this is 1102, so I do assume you have at least some working knowledge of MLA. MLA and requirements, actually, as it says on the rubric. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about MLA first. Double space, Times New Roman, your different headers, your works cited page. We haven't actually talked about the works cited page, and to be totally honest with you, I'm not going to do it now. But I want you guys to attempt it. Just attempt it. If it's not perfect or even good this time around, I can live with that, but I want you to try to have a works cited page. Just give it a shot. You can go to the OWL at Purdue, OWL. It stands for Online Writing Lab. It's a free style guide. You can look up works cited stuff. But take 2 minutes and try to give me a works cited entry for your poem, whichever one you chose. We will talk more about works cited as we go, especially for the second paper. More on that later. But this time around, we had much more important elements to consider. But anyway, MLA is number one. Oh, also I should mention, there's an MLA template on CourseDen in the helpful document section. You can also just Google MLA. Like, it's not hard. So, yeah. Requirements outside of MLA stuff, that usually comes down to just paper length, stuff like that. All those little guidelines that are listed on the prompt, you want to double check that stuff. Also, to be clear, you guys get really funny when it comes to page counts. I believe this first paper is 3 pages, if I'm not mistaken. That does not mean, oh, I made it to the top of the 3rd page. That's not 3 pages, that's 2 pages. 3 pages is real close to the bottom of the 3rd page. That's what 3 pages is. So let's not get cute here. Anyway, why do I spend so much time talking about that? Again, this is 10%. The other sections are more important numerically, but I always see, in my opinion, way too many students losing points on this section. Like, it might only be 4 points, 6 points, something like that. Those are easy points. The rest of these, I mean, take thought, take, like, I gotta really figure this out and try to do a good job. The requirements section is MLA, and is your paper long enough? You can do that. You can make that happen, okay? So I just get yourself those free points, you know? Like, don't be silly about this. Anyway, next section, thesis, 20%. You know, in some ways, I would think makes sense. It's your thesis. More than that, though, it's your introduction generally. So your thesis is obviously the star of your show. God, I can't talk or think. I'm sorry. Your thesis is the star of the show in your introduction. But bear in mind how we talked about the introduction up to this point, especially when it comes to the roadmap, sort of leading me through your ideas and how they work. When it gets to that thesis, another way to put that is, you can have an amazing thesis, but if you don't help me understand how it works before we get there, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense, just regardless. So all the parts of the introduction leading to sort of the best thesis you can come up with is really what that section is about. So it's not just the thesis, even though that's obviously a super important element. Support, also 20%. This is your evidence. In our case, we're talking about poems. These are your quotations. And again, there's 2 ways to talk about this one. Number 1, how are they integrated? Which is to say, your citations, your context. Do you have all the little sort of mechanisms we talked about you need to have? I would hope that's kind of easy to this point. And again, if you're not sure, you can review our earlier materials. You can look over your notes. That's a fun joke for me. You guys should take notes. You can also, again, the OWL at Purdue is a great resource for double checking some of that stuff if you're not sure, you know, where parentheticals go, things like this. Beyond that, though, the other way to talk about support, and I would say the more important element of this, is how you use that evidence. So again, what we've practiced in class, like several times up to this point, even if you have a great quotation and pretty good context and all that stuff, if you don't do anything with that evidence, you're not using it, right? Which is a problem. So I'll try to think of a line real quick. Oh man, I'm putting myself on the spot. The line we keep coming back to, do they still make love, line break, to their wives? You know, contextually, it's interesting because it's kind of wild that he would have that thought at a basketball game, right? But beyond that, you know, what elements, what details could we focus on? There's the line break there. Do they still make love to their wives? We talked a little bit about how that suggests, it tells us a good deal about what his real priorities are, right? Like at first glance, it would, you know, oh, do they still make love to their wives? He assumes they have wives, all this stuff. But it really says, well, he just wants to know if they make love at all. Like, that's what matters to this guy, right? According to that line break. And from there, once you focus on those details, sorry, I gotta like, once you focus on those details, that's where your argument begins. Anyway, that's how support works. Okay. Organization, 20%. Again, in some respects, it's self-explanatory. How organized is your paper, which is to say, how organized are your ideas? Do they build upon one another? If I'm going to boil all that down, really, it's do you have topic sentences? And again, at this stage, we haven't talked about them a ton. We just haven't had the time yet in the semester. And it's also one of those things you got to practice so you get better as we go. I would advise you at this stage, just in my own experience, right? I've looked at a lot of papers. Most of you don't even attempt topic sentences. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, you just don't even try. So what I'm saying is, even if it's not good, which will happen, okay? Just accept that. I'm telling you, if you attempt a topic sentence, it will be better than nothing when it comes to your grade. Again, that's what all this is about. Take a swing. To review very briefly, topic sentence is meant to do two things. Number one, sum up your body paragraph, right? Topic sentence goes at the top of every body paragraph. What's the main idea of that paragraph? Can you sum it up in a sentence? Hopefully you can. Put that at the top of your paragraph. The other thing it's meant to be is argumentative. It should be something that requires proof. It should be specific. But of course, it would follow your body paragraph is supposed to be an argument as well. And if you're summing that up, well then your topic sentence should be. I'll tell you this, if you feel like you've done a pretty bang up job of summing up your body paragraph in a sentence and that sentence is not an argument, then you might also have a problem with your body paragraph, right? Anyway, that's organization. The last two, style and then grammar and mechanics. These are actually connected. These are both to do with your writing, but they're a little bit different. I'll start with grammar. I feel like that's easier to explain. I feel like you guys already know what that is. Grammar, spelling, usage, punctuation, things like this. Probably the ways you guys think of writing and how good it is or how bad it is, that you're probably thinking of grammar mostly. Style is a little harder to define according to what I assume you guys know about writing, but style, we had that mini lesson I gave the other day where some of you, I remember this, like damn near blacked out on me. I kept it as quick as I could, but the thing about all the unnecessary language we had in that student example, right? So unnecessary language, awkward constructions, colloquial language, which is a fancy word for slang, you know, using a lot of like I think this, that stuff. In any of those elements, and I'll just put an umbrella over them and say unnecessary or unhelpful elements, that's style. So you could be great grammatically, but you could still struggle in style. It's possible, you know. And again, these last two, these are skills, and I liken it to basketball. So whatever kind of writers you guys are to this point, it's like, you know, it's the same thing as if you're teaching somebody to play basketball. You all have experience in it, you know, you've been in school for X amount of years, but you show up, we've known each other for a couple weeks now, and I've reviewed with you, I feel like, how to dribble a little bit and things like this, but you can only improve so much in a couple weeks. That's just the nature of it. And that's my way of saying, wherever you're at right now, stylistically, and in terms of your grammar, your usage, all that stuff, it can improve over the course of a semester, but it does take time. It's not the sort of thing you can just flip a switch usually. So just know that. But another way to swing that is you want to do the best that you can. The rest of these, so that's 30% of your grade, and everyone will do reasonably well in that section in my experience. I'm not trying to scare anybody. The rest of the rubric, those are things that you can improve. You can improve in those sections much quicker, in my experience, and that's 70% of the rubric. Anyway, that's very generally how I approach grading your papers. Again, I feel like when I was a student, I would have appreciated, because we would always look at rubrics as a class, and it never made any sense to me because it's a lot of language, which, to be totally honest with you, a lot of it's kind of useless. I didn't write this rubric. I'm not in love with it. But when you boil it down, it really can be like a bulleted list almost in a lot of ways. So there's that. I want to talk to you just for a second about the peer review, but I'm going to take a break because I'm dying. I'll be right back. All right, two more things. Pretty sure I have a fever, by the way. Not that you should care. Don't worry about that. All right. 2 things. Number 1, peer review. I mentioned this in the email I sent you guys, but I also know many of you don't look at those. You have a peer review on Turnitin.com. I like to do it that way, especially this day and age, because it's all contactless, right? Which is to say, first of all, start at the beginning. Turnitin will not let you do the peer review unless you turn in the assignment for it, which is to say the rough draft in this case. So if you turn in a rough draft, Turnitin will give you somebody else's paper for the peer review. And there's only, I think there's 4 or 5 questions. It's not a lot. But I want to highlight the questions I give you for this first peer review purposefully ask you to think about a lot of the elements I just told you to focus on when it comes to your grade, okay? So, sorry. So, when you go and look at that peer review, it should help you practice a little bit thinking about topic sentences, how we use evidence, things like this, okay? But again, if you do not turn in a rough draft, it will not give you a peer review. That's just how it works. Now, the other way to put that, if you don't turn in a rough draft, that tells me you're probably at least a little bit behind on your paper. What I would have you do in class in that case is work on your paper, because that's what you need to be doing right now. So do that. If you can't do the peer review, that's a bummer. Your paper is way more important. Work on that. The other thing I'll say, along with this video, I'm going to post, I have all the questions in a document. I'm going to post that separately, like under this video on Coursden. I've been told numerous times by numerous students that they actually like to have the questions as well, because they want to take those questions and apply them to their own paper. And to that I say, that's an excellent fucking idea. Like, well, I'll put it to you this way. The reason you do peer review, most students don't realize this. Most students have the wrong idea. The reason you actually do peer review is not to help your partner, your peer, whoever it is. I mean, you should. The world would be better if we helped each other, right? So do that. But it's actually for selfish reasons. Like, it's for you. I talked already about skills. I use the metaphor sometimes like little muscles in your head that you don't quite have because you haven't used them. Same kind of deal here. The reason you do a peer review is, and I'm sure you guys will recognize this, it's so much easier to see problems in somebody else's work, right? The reason for that is when it's your work, you've spent a lot of time with it and all these other things, your head fills in gaps. It just does, like logical gaps or sometimes grammatical gaps, like you're missing language in your things like this, but your head will fill that stuff in, you won't even realize it. So what we're trying to do with a peer review is build your editorial muscle, the thing that helps you see things that are wrong, things that need to be fixed. If you do that in peer review enough, the idea is you get better at looking at your own work. And there's a cat trying to jump up here and I'm having a hell of a time. Hey, you know what? Come here, Lou. Oh, this is Louie. Okay. Anyway, where was I? Oh, so you should take the peer review seriously. But again, I will also send you, or rather post the questions in a separate document so you have access to them. And you can use them on your own paper. I highly, actually recommend it. Okay, last thing. Oh, I'll get us out of here. Your rough draft is due today. If you haven't done it, you know, I'll look at it a little later. So you still have a little bit of time. But again, keep in mind, you're not gonna be able to do the peer review unless you turn it in. And at some point, you gotta make that cutoff and just decide, well, the paper's due Wednesday night at midnight. The paper's due Wednesday night at midnight. That needs to take precedent, right? For Thursday, I want you to at least look over the paper 2 prompt. That's in Unit 2 on Coursden. That won't take you 5 seconds to look over that guy. We're gonna talk about it in class, but I'd like you to at least have set eyes on it. Ugh. You also have assigned Vonnegut chapters 1 and 2. Now look, I like to think I'm not incredibly foolish. I am somewhat foolish, I grant you, but I say that to say this, and I apologize. Ugh. I understand you have a paper due Wednesday night. I understand many of you will not complete the reading for Thursday's class. That's okay. Again, for right now, what really matters is the paper. So, but what I would like you to attempt, at least, is to read as much of Vonnegut as you can, those first 2 chapters. I think the first chapter is like 20-something pages, and they go quick. Some of you right now are freaking out. You'll see the book reads very quickly, actually. It's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of weirdness. But we're going to talk about those first 2 chapters. Really, all I like to do the first day for paper 2, we spend most of our time actually talking about how the second paper is going to work, because it's a little bit different from this first paper. And then with the last bit of class, I'm going to actually try to help you guys make sense of how the book is going to work. And it helps that conversation if you've at least dipped your toe into it. So again, to review, what matters is the paper. Make that magic happen. To whatever degree is possible, at least read some of Vonnegut. Some of it. There's only 2 chapters assigned. I understand you probably won't get that done for Thursday. Of course, that means you'll have a little bit of catching up to do for next Tuesday, but you can do that. But again, it'll help it, 15 pages, go crazy. No matter what you do with this paper, if you go all the way to midnight on Wednesday night, you'll be able to read some of Vonnegut for Thursday. You can do it. Anyway, we'll talk about that on Thursday. God willing, I'll be there. We'll see about that. Otherwise, I hope everyone's well, or at least better than me. And that's all I got. I'll catch you later. Thanks.